My name is Tim Frank. I'm a historian here at Arlington National Cemetery, and today I'm going to take you on a journey through our rich history and explain the exhibits that are here at the Memorial Amphitheater display room at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. Throughout the room, we have displays and artifacts that illustrate our history here at Arlington and honor the unknown soldiers. On a regular basis, we receive visits from foreign dignitaries, primarily heads of state and military leaders who visit the cemetery on their way to meetings at the Pentagon or at the White House. Customarily, they lay a wreath at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, and then they come in here to the display room where cemetery leadership greets them and then turns them over to me or one of my fellow historians. Then we walk them through our history. Arlington was once the home of George Washington Parke Custis, adopted grandson of George Washington. When he died, his daughter, Mary Custis Lee, inherited the property, and her husband, Robert E. Lee, served as the executor of his father-in-law's will. On May 23, 1861, the state of Virginia seceded from the Union, and on May 24th, the United States Army seized the property and has maintained it ever since. In 1864, the government confiscated the property formally for failure to pay taxes. By May of 1864, the two nearby cemeteries, the Soldiers' Home Cemetery in Washington, D.C., and the Alexandria National Cemetery were filled to capacity. So on May 13, 1864, we buried Private William Chrisman here in what is now Section 27. 1 month later, on June 15, 1864, the Secretary of War, Edwin Stanton, formally set aside 200 acres to become a national cemetery. I want to point out that in those days, it was not considered an honor to be buried at a national cemetery. It tended to indicate that your family couldn't afford the cost to return your remains home. It was pretty expensive to embalm and transport in those days. All of that changed in 1868 when General John Logan, commander of the Grand Army of the Republic, the largest Civil War veterans organization, established Decoration Day. We now know Decoration Day as Memorial Day. The first Decoration Day was held here at Arlington, at the Arlington House, and thousands of people went around the cemetery decorating the graves of the fallen with flowers. Decoration Day became so popular that we now credit it as making Arlington National Cemetery our premier national cemetery. Thousands of people would show up every year to hear the president speak, and then they would spread out throughout the cemetery to place flowers on the graves of the fallen. In 1873, the Army quartermaster built this small amphitheater to house the crowds. Believe it or not, the Army completed it in 1 month, and it was ready for the 1873 Decoration Day. In those days, it was customary for the president to speak here at Arlington on Decoration Day, and that's a tradition that still continues to this day. The president customarily lays a wreath at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier on Memorial Day and Veterans Day, and then speaks to the crowds gathered in the amphitheater. The old amphitheater was a suitable venue for many years until one year over 20,000 people showed up here at Arlington, causing the Civil War veterans to push for a more suitable venue built here at Arlington National Cemetery. In 1913, Congress authorized this memorial amphitheater, and on October 13, 1915, President Woodrow Wilson laid the cornerstone over a copper memorabilia box. We actually opened the box in 2020 to commemorate the 100th anniversary of the dedication of the Memorial Amphitheater, which opened in 1920. The box was placed inside of another box to prevent damage to the contents. The contents were items that were important to the members of the Memorial Amphitheater Commission and to the United States. We found a Bible, a signed photograph of President Woodrow Wilson, copies of the Declaration of Independence and Constitution with only 17 amendments before Prohibition and a woman's right to vote. Other items were a silk flag, architectural drawings, coins, stamps, a congressional directory, and a city directory that happened to have my great-grandfather's name in it. He was a clerk with the DC government. I want to point out the architectural drawings in particular. In the original plan, the architects envisioned an obelisk or a statue where the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier is today. But that went by the wayside just a few months after the dedication of the Memorial Amphitheater, when in November of 1920, the British and the French interred their unknown soldiers. The American people read about the grand ceremonies in London and in Paris on November 11, 1920, and they began writing to the War Department and to Congress suggesting that we select, honor, and inter an unknown American to lay at rest here in Arlington National Cemetery. As a result, in October of 1921, 4 teams went out to the 4 American military cemeteries in France to disinter one unknown soldier at each of those cemeteries. Each team had 2 grave cards identifying the burial sites of unknown soldiers. They had strict instructions that if their first candidate was found with some identifying marks, that they were to reinter him and disinter the second candidate. In all 4 cases, the soldiers they disinterred first were unknown. They then had strict instructions to place each unknown in an identical casket at each cemetery and then proceed to the City Hall in Chalon-sur-Marne, France for a final selection. Sergeant Edward Younger was given the honor of selecting the unknown soldier. He was a decorated soldier from World War I who was wounded twice. Before he entered the room, teams went in and moved the caskets around so that no one could tell which cemeteries the unknowns came from. Then Sergeant Younger entered the room and quietly circled the caskets. He placed a spray of white roses on one of them, and that soldier became the unknown soldier for World War I. He was then placed in a special casket, and the other 3 were reinterred at the American Military Cemetery at Romilly, France. The unknown then made a journey to Le Havre, France, where he was presented French decorations before boarding USS Olympia for his final journey home. Olympia, which is now a museum ship in Philadelphia, was the Navy's most famous ship of the day. After docking at the Washington Navy Yard, he was taken to the United States Capitol so the American people could pay their respects before his burial here at Arlington National Cemetery on November 11, 1921, which was Armistice Day. General John J. Pershing, who commanded the American Expeditionary Forces in France, placed soil from France into the crypt, and Chief Plentycou, a Crow chief, left his war bonnet and acoustics as a tribute to the unknown soldier. President Harding presented the Medal of Honor, and the British presented the Victoria Cross. Other allies presented their highest awards for valor as well. The original tomb was a flat marble tomb, completed just in time for the funeral in 1921, but later on the Army had a design competition to complete the tomb, and the winning design was submitted by Thomas Hudson Jones and Lorimer Rich. In 1932, it was unveiled to the public. The figures that are carved in front of the tomb represent peace, victory, and valor. At the end of World War II, the American people once again requested that we honor an unknown soldier. By the time the decision was made, the Korean War was already underway, so it was decided to wait and inter both an unknown soldier from World War II and Korea. In 1956, Congress authorized the burial of the World War II and the Korean War unknowns, and in 1958, multiple teams spread out throughout the world where they selected the transatlantic candidate and the trans-Pacific candidate for World War II. At the same time, they selected a Korean War unknown in Hawaii from among 4 unknowns. The 3 were then taken off the coast of Norfolk, Virginia, aboard USS Canberra for a final selection of the World War II unknown. The transatlantic candidate and a trans-Pacific candidate were brought into a separate missile compartment where teams moved the caskets around so that no one could tell which theater of operations they came from. They were then placed on either side of the Korean War unknown for a final selection. Hospital Corpsman First Class William Charette was given the honor of selecting the World War II unknown, and he placed a wreath next to the casket that was to the right of the Korean War unknown, and that soldier became the unknown soldier for World War II. The soldier that was not selected was then buried at sea off the coast of Norfolk, Virginia. A Catholic, a Protestant, a Jewish, and an Orthodox chaplain looked on. They then committed him to the sea, proceeded to the Washington Navy Yard, and then to the U.S. Capitol so that the American people could pay their respects to the unknown soldiers of World War II and Korea. On Memorial Day 1958, President Eisenhower presided over the funeral of the World War II and Korean War unknowns. He presented the Medal of Honor to each unknown, and what's interesting here is that he stood in as the next of kin of the World War II unknown, and Vice President Nixon stood in as the next of kin of the Korean War unknown. They accepted the flags that draped the casket, as any family member would today at a military funeral. On Veterans Day 1978, President Jimmy Carter and Max Cleland, Administrator of the Department of Veterans Affairs, presented a bronze plaque to honor Vietnam veterans. Later on in 1984, President Ronald Reagan presided over the funeral of Vietnam unknown on Memorial Day and presented him with the Medal of Honor. He also stood in as the next of kin. In 1998, he was identified as First Lieutenant Michael Blassie of the Air Force using the new DNA technology, and he was returned to his family. He was then buried at Jefferson Barracks in Missouri. In 1999, the empty crypt was rededicated to honor America's missing personnel, and due to advances in DNA technology, there will never be another unknown soldier. As I mentioned earlier, the original tomb was a flat marble tomb, and believe it or not, there wasn't always a guard here. After his burial in 1921, correspondence started pouring into the War Department, suggesting that they have some guard here at the tomb to keep tourists from crowding around the tomb and being disrespectful. There was a civilian guard here at the time, but his duty was to walk around the amphitheater and to help tourists, and it was not specifically to watch the tomb of the unknown soldier. The Army sent someone out to investigate and determined that while they were not desecrating the tomb, there should be a guard here to make sure tourists were respectful. So in 1925, a civilian guard was placed during daylight hours to watch over the tomb. In 1926, the Army assigned soldiers to guard the tomb, also during daylight hours. In 1937, the Army switched to a 24-hour guard, and in 1948, the 3rd Infantry Regiment, the Old Guard, was given the honor of guarding the tomb, and they've been guarding it ever since. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. In hurricanes and blizzards, in the dead of night, and the stifling heat of the Washington summers, they are here guarding the unknown soldiers. In 1958, the Army established a Tomb Guard identification badge, and since that time, over 680 soldiers have earned that honor. It takes up to 9 months to earn the badge, and soldiers must go through a series of tests on cemetery and tomb knowledge, on their uniform, appearance, and their outside performance. Once they successfully complete this process, they are then awarded the Guard Tomb of the Unknown Soldier Identification Badge, which they can wear for life. It is one of the rarest badges in the Army, and it can be revoked at any time while they are on active duty or when they retire if they do something to bring dishonor on the tomb or the Army. And in the tomb quarters, there's a wall of names that shows the name of the soldier and the badge number. And if they do something that brings dishonor, then that soldier's name will be scratched off, the plaque will be removed, and it will be replaced by another plaque that simply says revoked. The badge number and their name will never be spoken again in the tomb quarters. The Tomb of the Unknown Soldier was originally a place where families whose loved ones did not return from World War I could visit and stand at the tomb and potentially feel that this was their husband, their brother, their uncle, their son. It provided one place in the United States where these families could go to mourn. Over the next century, as other unknowns joined the unknown soldier from World War I, families continued to come here. Nowadays, it's more of a place where Americans can collectively come here and honor our service members who fell in our wars throughout our history. And over the last century, presidents and prime ministers, families, and other dignitaries have come here to lay a wreath and place mementos here in the display room. And throughout the room, you'll see many mementos that were left beginning on November 11th, 1921 to the present day. And in this case here, we highlight some of the more recent gifts from heads of state, ministers of defense, and other dignitaries who took time to honor the unknowns here at Arlington National Cemetery. I hope you have enjoyed this walking tour of the display room and that it inspires you to visit our website at arlingtoncemetery.mil/education, where you can learn more about our rich history or visit here in person and explore our grounds.
In 2021, Arlington National Cemetery will celebrate the Centennial of the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier with a series of official Department of Defense events. Our inaugural event for this commemoration was the ribbon-cutting ceremony in November 2020, which unveiled the new Tomb of the Unknown Soldier exhibit. Also released is a Tomb of the Unknown Soldier education module that can be found on the Arlington Cemetery website at www.education.arlingtoncemetery.mil/themes/Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. The education module features ready-to-go lesson plans and walking tours for educators, students of all ages, and lifelong learners. Beginning in January 2021, the cemetery's history team will provide monthly historical interpretive presentations and tours. A commemorative publication will also be distributed to the public this coming fall. In November 2021, the Naval District of Washington will host a symposium and a historical plaque dedication. On 9 and 10 November, the U.S. Military District of Washington will conduct a 2-day public flower-laying ceremony at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. Finally, on 11 November 2021, There will be a joint full honor procession and an Armed Forces full honor wreath-laying ceremony during the National Veterans Day observance. We invite you to honor, remember, and explore at www.arlingtoncemetery.mil/TUS100 and connect with us on social media using the hashtag ANCTUS100.